My name is Sarah Jenkins, and I build my life on verifiable facts. As a research librarian in the Raleigh-Durham area, order is my sanctuary, meticulous cataloging my comfort zone, which made the phone call from Liberty National Bank utterly illogical. A $485,000 mortgage under my name? Impossible. I rented a small apartment. I tracked every penny saved from my modest salary. I was the responsible one, the quiet, predictable counterpoint to my younger sister Olivia's charming, financially enabled chaos, the golden child our parents adored. But as the polite banker on the line confirmed my social security number, the origination date, 3 years ago, exactly when Olivia got her dream house, a chilling possibility began to form in the pit of my stomach. What if the chaos I'd always kept at arm's length had finally, catastrophically, forged my signature and stolen my future? The whole thing started, ironically, because I tried to do something responsible and normal: buy a slightly less ancient car. My trusty 10-year-old sedan, affectionately nicknamed the Rust Bucket, had developed a death rattle that even the most optimistic mechanic couldn't ignore. I'd spent weeks researching reliable used hybrids, found a decent deal online, crunched the numbers, and confidently submitted a loan application to my local credit union. My credit score, nurtured over a decade of paying bills on time, living below my means, and avoiding debt like the plague, was nearly perfect. The loan amount was modest. Approval, I assumed, was a formality. The rejection email landed in my inbox the next afternoon. "We regret to inform you." I blinked, certain it was a system error. I called the loan officer immediately. "Ms. Jenkins?" He sounded vaguely uncomfortable after pulling up my file. "Ah, yes, regarding the auto loan. Unfortunately, we couldn't approve it based on the current debt-to-income ratio reported." "Debt to income?" I repeated, confused. "But aside from my manageable student loans and the car I'm replacing, I have no significant debt. My credit card is paid off monthly." There was a pause. "Well, Ms. Jenkins," he said, lowering his voice slightly, "the report shows a very substantial outstanding mortgage obligation originating about 3 years ago for $485,000. The air left my lungs. $485,000? Mortgage? That's that's impossible," I stammered. "I don't own property. I rent. I've never even applied for a mortgage." "I understand this must be confusing," he said patiently, though I could hear the note of dealing with a potentially delusional client creeping into his tone. "But the record is quite clear, under your full name, date of birth, and social security number. Property address is listed in Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill, March 2022. The dates, the location. They slammed into me with the force of a physical blow 3 years ago. That was exactly when Olivia, my beautiful, effervescent younger sister, had miraculously acquired that charming, ridiculously overpriced bungalow in Chapel Hill that she couldn't possibly afford on her meager earnings from whatever part-time gallery job she held that month. At the time, Mom and Dad, Michael and Deborah Jenkins, had been vague but thrilled. "Olivia found such a deal," Mom had gushed. "It needs work, of course, but it has such potential. We helped her a little with the down payment, naturally." A little. How much was a little? Enough to cover a nearly $500,000 property? The pattern, the one I'd lived with my whole life, flashed before my eyes. Olivia, the favored one, gets the dream house. Me, Sarah, the responsible librarian, gets saddled with the debt? It couldn't be. It was too monstrous, too unthinkable, even for them. "Mr. Harrison, I said, my voice suddenly cold, steady, the librarian in me taking over, demanding facts. "There has been a grave error, potentially identity theft. I require copies of all documentation associated with this fraudulent mortgage immediately. Application, signatures, everything. For review with legal counsel and law enforcement." "Of course, Ms. Jenkins," he replied swiftly now, the gravity sinking in. "Right away. I'll send the encrypted file to your verified email address within the hour." I hung up, my hand icy cold. I walked numbly to the library staff room, poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink, and stared out the window at the familiar oak tree on the lawn, its leaves just beginning to turn gold. My meticulously ordered world had just been fractured by a betrayal so profound, so violating, it felt unreal. My own family. Using my identity, my good credit built through years of careful sacrifice to secure a massive loan for my sister without my knowledge, without my consent. The encrypted PDF arrived 40 minutes later. Opening it felt like peeling back a bandage on a festering wound. There it was. My name, my social security number, my old address from 3 years ago before I moved to my current apartment, and the property address, Olivia's trendy Chapel Hill bungalow. Page after page of legalese, disclosures I'd never seen, terms I'd never agreed to. Then the signature pages. My name signed with a flourish that was almost, but not quite, mine. The S looped a little too high, the K in Jenkins too sharp. A Hamasit veiny. A disturbingly competent one, clearly practiced, designed to pass muster on a quick check, but undeniably fake to my own eye. They hadn't just used my information, they had actively counterfeited my identity. I scrolled through the rest, feeling sick. Loan amount, $485,000. Origination date, March 15th, 2022. Borrower, Sarah Jenkins. Co-borrower, none. The pieces clicked into place with chilling certainty. They needed good credit to secure the loan for Olivia's house. Mine was excellent. Olivia's was likely trashed from years of impulse buys and unpaid bills. My parents probably co-signed initially, but perhaps their own financial situation wasn't strong enough. Or maybe adding my income pushed the application over the edge, so they simply took my identity, forged my name, secured the loan, set up automatic payments from some account I wasn't privy to, keeping the whole thing hidden for 3 years until perhaps a missed payment or a bank review triggered the overdue notice and the call that blew their scheme apart. The cold fury returned, sharp and focused now. All those years of being their responsible one. All those times Mom sighed about finances while buying Olivia designer shoes. All those times Dad patted my head and said, "You'll figure it out, Sarah, you always do," while writing checks for Olivia's art supplies or networking trips. It wasn't just neglect, it was strategic resource allocation. I was the reliable workhorse funding the favored show pony. My first instinct was to call them, scream, demand answers. But the librarian in me, the forensic accountant I might have become in another life, urged caution. Information is power. Confrontation without preparation is just noise. I needed a lawyer, immediately. I remembered Ms. Anya Sharma, a sharp, pragmatic attorney specializing in financial fraud and real estate law, who had given a presentation at the library last year on protecting assets. I found her card, my hand steady now. But before calling Ms. Sharma, I needed one more piece of information. Context. I needed to see them, see Olivia in her house, gauge their current state of blissful ignorance or perhaps subtle anxiety. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Hi, sweetie. Hope work is good. Don't forget Sunday dinner this week. Making your favorite lasagna." 3 inches lasagna. As if everything was normal. As if they hadn't just stolen my financial future. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. "Sounds great, Mom," I typed back, my fingers feeling strangely detached. "Looking forward to it." Let them think the dutiful daughter was still playing her part. Let them enjoy their Sunday dinner. They had no idea the guest arriving wasn't just coming for lasagna. She was coming armed with facts, fueled by betrayal, and ready to audit their entire deceptive existence. The library was closed, but my investigation was just beginning. The days leading up to Sunday dinner crawled by in a haze of simmering fury and icy resolve. I functioned on autopilot at the library, shelving books, answering reference questions, the mundane tasks a strange counterpoint to the extraordinary betrayal churning inside me. At night, sleep offered little escape, my mind replaying the image of that forged signature, the staggering sum, $485,000, tied to my name like an anchor. I meticulously organized the documents the bank had sent, printed out my credit report showing the devastating impact, and reread the email confirming my consultation with Miss Anya Sharma for Monday morning. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. Driving towards Chapel Hill on Sunday felt like heading into battle, armed only with the truth. Olivia's trendy neighborhood, all craftsman bungalows and meticulously landscaped yards, always felt like another world compared to my modest apartment complex near Raleigh. Pulling up to her house, the house, I noticed the professionally pruned rose bushes, the gleaming new SUV in the driveway, Olivia's latest acquisition, naturally. Small details that now screamed, funded by fraud. My fraud. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my simple dress, and pasted on the practiced neutral expression I'd perfected over years of family gatherings. Olivia flung the door open, engulfing me in a cloud of expensive perfume. Sarah, hi, come on in. Mom and Dad are already here. She seemed slightly more effusive than usual, perhaps a flicker of nervousness behind the bright smile, or maybe I was just projecting. I stepped inside. The house was immaculate, decorated in the latest minimalist chic style ripped straight from a magazine. Expensive art on the walls, plush rugs underfoot, a state-of-the-art kitchen gleaming under recessed lighting. My parents were seated in the living room, Dad engrossed in a golf tournament on the oversized flat-screen TV, Mom flipping through a catalog, looking perfectly at home. They offered casual greetings as I entered. The sheer normalcy of it, the complete absence of any visible guilt or anxiety on their faces, was staggering. Olivia offered me a glass of wine, chattering about her latest freelance gig, which never seemed to translate into actual income, and complaining about the cost of organic groceries. As she bustled around the kitchen island, setting out appetizers, my eyes scanned the room. And then I saw it. On a small mahogany side table near the entryway, nestled amongst glossy magazines and Olivia's car keys, was a small stack of mail. Most were addressed to Olivia, but peeking out from the bottom were two envelopes, standard windowed bills or junk mail, addressed clearly and unmistakably to Sarah Jenkins, Olivia's street address, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. My breath hitched. Mail. Addressed to me, delivered here. They hadn't just used my identity. They had actively redirected my mail to this address, likely to intercept any bank statements or notices related to the fraudulent mortgage. The calculated deception stole the air from my lungs. This wasn't a moment of weakness or desperation on their part. This was a long-term, premeditated strategy to defraud me and cover their tracks. The last flicker of doubt, the tiny voice whispering, "Maybe it's a misunderstanding," died completely. Dinner was served. Mom's famous lasagna, the dish she always made for family occasions. The conversation flowed easily around me. Dad complaining about politics, Mom praising Olivia's decorating skills, Olivia recounting some trivial drama with a friend. I ate mechanically, the food tasteless, my mind racing, formulating the calmest, most direct way to detonate the bomb they didn't know I was holding. I waited until the plates were cleared, until Olivia was showing Mom pictures on her phone and Dad was half asleep in front of the TV's drone. I cleared my throat softly. So, I began, keeping my voice light, conversational. Funny story, actually. Three pairs of eyes turned towards me, mildly curious. I applied for a small car loan this week, I continued, watching their faces closely. Just for a reliable used car. And strangely enough, I got rejected. Olivia fidgeted slightly, suddenly fascinated by her fingernails. Mom's smile tightened. Dad shifted in his chair. Apparently, I went on, locking eyes briefly with my mother, my credit report shows an incredibly high debt load. Something about a $485,000 mortgage originated about 3 years ago for a property in Chapel Hill. I let the silence stretch, heavy and thick. Seems it's tied to my name and social security number, which is odd since I rent my apartment in Raleigh. I paused. Does anyone know anything about that? The air crackled. Olivia went pale, refusing to look at me. Mom opened her mouth, then closed it again. Dad coughed loudly. Well? I prompted gently. Oh, honey, Mom finally began, forcing a bright, brittle smile, reaching across the table as if to pat my hand. Don't you worry about that. It's it's just some paperwork. A formality. A formality? I repeated quietly. Yes, Olivia chimed in quickly, defensively. My credit wasn't strong enough on its own to qualify for this house. She gestured around vaguely. Mom and Dad knew you wouldn't mind helping out. It's family helping family. You have such good credit, Sarah, it barely even counts. It barely counts? I echoed, incredulous. Using my identity, forging my signature on a nearly $500,000 loan barely counts? Now, don't get dramatic, Dad grumbled, finally tearing his eyes from the TV, his tone dismissive. It's not like you're actually paying it. We handle the payments. Presumably until they couldn't, hence the overdue call I might have received if they hadn't redirected my mail. It doesn't affect you. It doesn't affect me. It tanked my credit score, prevented me from getting my own car loan, tied my name to a massive debt I never authorized, and constituted multiple felonies. But to them, sitting here in Olivia's fraudulently funded house, it was just paperwork, an inconvenience I shouldn't make a fuss about. The sheer breathtaking entitlement, the complete lack of remorse or even basic understanding of the severity of their actions left me momentarily speechless. There was no guilt here, no shame, only annoyance that I had discovered their little secret. I leaned back in my chair, a cold calm settling over me. There was nothing more to say here. No explanation I could offer would penetrate their self-serving narrative. No plea for understanding would be met with anything but deflection. Right, I said softly, standing up. Thanks for clearing that up. I actually have to get going. Early start tomorrow. Oh, already? Mom fluttered, clearly relieved the awkward moment was passing. Well, drive safe, sweetie. So glad you could come. Yes, thanks for explaining, I repeated, my voice devoid of inflection. I gathered my purse, avoiding eye contact, and walked towards the door. They thought they had handled it, smoothed over the responsible daughter's silly concerns. They had no idea the conversation wasn't over. It had just moved to a different venue, one where just paperwork had serious legal consequences. Driving back to Raleigh, the numbness began to wear off, replaced by a focused, almost surgical anger. They hadn't just betrayed me, they had fundamentally misunderstood who I was. They saw the quiet librarian, the responsible daughter, and assumed compliant. They never saw the person who valued truth, order, and justice above all else. The next morning, sitting across from Ms. Anya Sharma in her quiet professional office, I felt a sense of validation. I laid out the story calmly, methodically, handing her the credit report, the forged mortgage documents, the photos I'd discreetly taken of the mail addressed to me at Olivia's house. Ms. Sharma listened intently, her expression growing increasingly grim. When I finished, she leaned back, her eyes sharp. Sarah, she said, her voice crisp, let me be unequivocal. This isn't a family misunderstanding. This is felony identity theft and mortgage fraud. Your parents and sister conspired to use your identity to secure a loan they couldn't obtain otherwise. This is serious. Potentially criminal, definitely actionable civilly. Hearing the stark legal terms mirrored the cold certainty in my own gut. What do we do? I asked. Ms. Sharma outlined the plan. File a comprehensive police report immediately. Send a formal certified dispute letter to the bank's fraud department, including the police report and evidence of forgery. Initiate legal proceedings to have your name formally removed from the loan and title documents, if applicable, and pursue damages if desired. It won't be quick, and it won't be pleasant, she warned. They will likely react poorly when confronted legally. I understand, I said, meeting her gaze. Let's start. Leaving her office, clutching the folder containing the first steps of my legal strategy, I felt lighter than I had in years. The path ahead was daunting, the emotional toll undeniable. But for the first time since that baffling loan rejection notice, I wasn't just reacting, I was acting. They thought the quiet librarian wouldn't fight back. They forgot that librarians are experts at research, documentation, and uncovering the truth. And the truth was about to bring their carefully constructed house of cards crashing down. Following Ms. Sharma's clear, concise instructions felt like navigating by a reliable map after being lost in a fog of emotional manipulation for years. The day after our consultation, I walked into the Raleigh Police Department, clutching my organized file. Filing a report for identity theft and mortgage fraud against my own parents and sister felt surreal, a violation of some deeply ingrained taboo about family loyalty. But sitting across from the patient, professional detective, laying out the facts, the forged signatures, the redirected mail I'd glimpsed, the family dinner confession, felt less like betrayal and more like self preservation. He took my statement seriously, assigning a case number, assuring me they would coordinate with the bank's fraud department. Next came the certified letter to Liberty National Bank, drafted by Ms. Sharma, formally disputing the $485,000 mortgage, citing the identity theft documented in the attached police report, and demanding immediate suspension of any payments or actions related to the loan under my name pending investigation. Sending that letter felt like launching a flare into the darkness, signaling that the victim would no longer be silent. The predictable storm broke about 2 weeks later, after the bank's official notice must have landed on Olivia's doorstep in Chapel Hill. My phone, which I'd kept on silent but monitored warily, lit up with calls from blocked numbers, followed by frantic voicemails. Mom's voice, tearful and accusatory. "Sarah, the bank is investigating." They mentioned fraud. "You have to retract your statement. You'll ruin Olivia. You'll ruin us." Dad's voice, tight with barely suppressed rage. "You ungrateful child. After everything we did to help Olivia secure that house, you call the bank now and tell them it was a misunderstanding." Even Olivia left a tearful message. "Sarah, please, my dream house. Don't do this. Mom said you just needed to sign something simple." Their utter lack of remorse, their continued insistence that I was the problem, that their felony was just a misunderstanding or helping family, it solidified my resolve. I forwarded the voicemails to Ms. Sharma and didn't respond. Then came their next tactic. Ms. Sharma called me a few days later. "Sarah," she said, a note of weary professionalism in her voice, "I just received a rather insistent call from a Mr. Henderson, the branch manager at the Liberty National Bank branch your parents have used for years. Apparently, your parents paid him a visit, tried to leverage their long-standing relationship to have your fraud claim dismissed internally as a simple family dispute that got out of hand. They painted you as emotionally unstable." "Did it work?" I asked, my stomach twisting. "Of course not," Ms. Sharma scoffed lightly. "Mortgage fraud and identity theft are handled centrally by the bank's corporate fraud division, not by local branch managers susceptible to sob stories." Mr. Henderson politely directed them back to the fraud department and then called me, quite concerned about the pressure they applied. If anything, their attempt just adds another layer to their questionable behavior. Their desperation, however, soon spilled over into direct confrontation again. My mother showed up at the library during my shift. She bypassed the main desk, walking straight back to the reference section where I was helping a student. Her face pale, her eyes blazing. "Sarah Jenkins!" she hissed, her voice loud enough to make heads turn. "We need to talk. Now outside." I calmly excused myself from the student, my heart pounding but my expression carefully neutral. "Mom," I said quietly as I followed her out to the front steps, "all communication needs to go through Ms. Sharma." "Don't you talk lawyers to me," she cried, clutching her purse tightly. "You are destroying this family. Olivia could lose her house, your father's reputation. How could you report your own parents to the police? How could you steal your daughter's identity and saddle her with $500,000 in fraudulent debt?" I countered, my voice low but firm. "How could you justify that as family helping family?" She stared at me, speechless for a moment, then resorted to tears. "But we did it for Olivia. You have your stable job, your savings. She has nothing. You wouldn't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly, Mom," I said, the last vestiges of pity draining away. "I understand that you value Olivia's wants above my entire future. I understand that honesty means nothing to you when it conflicts with your convenience. And I understand," I took a step back, creating physical distance, "that this conversation is over. Contact Ms. Sharma." I turned and walked back into the library, ignoring her tearful calls behind me. The bank's investigation concluded remarkably quickly, aided by the clear forgery evidence and the police report. They confirmed my status as a victim of identity theft and initiated procedures to nullify the loan based on fraud, effectively removing my name and liability entirely. The consequence, however, was immediate. Without a valid borrower, the $485,000 loan defaulted, and the bank began foreclosure proceedings on Olivia's trendy Chapel Hill house. The final act came about 8 months after that first fateful bank call. I was settled into a new, slightly larger apartment, using the money I hadn't spent on a car loan I didn't need, and focusing on my work, slowly rebuilding my peace. My phone rang one evening. An unknown number, but something made me answer. It was Olivia. Her voice was barely recognizable, stripped of its usual entitled confidence, thick with tears. Sarah. Please, don't hang up. I stayed silent. They're foreclosing, she choked out. The house. We have to be out in 2 weeks. Mom and Dad, they have nowhere to go. I have nowhere to go. Please, Sarah, isn't there anything you can do? Talk to the bank? Help us find a lawyer? Just help? I listened quietly, feeling nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction. Just a vast, empty distance. The drama, the desperation. It felt like watching a play from a very remote seat. They had created this reality entirely through their own actions. Their choices had consequences. Olivia, I said finally, my voice calm, steady. I told you months ago during that dinner at your house that family helping family means you don't commit felonies against each other. You didn't listen. You, Mom, and Dad made choices based on entitlement and deceit. I took a breath. I genuinely hope you find your way, I do. But my help, my resources, my name, those are no longer available to you. You need to figure this out on your own now. There was a broken sob on the other end. Then the line went dead. I set my phone down. It didn't ring again. Life moved forward. I heard, indirectly, that my parents and Olivia eventually moved into a cramped rental far from their old neighborhood. Their lives significantly downsized, their relationships likely strained beyond repair. I focused on my own path. And strangely, my experience, once processed, sparked a new sense of purpose. As a librarian, I saw people struggling with basic financial literacy every day. I saw the confusion surrounding credit reports, loans, identity protection. Using my own painful journey as fuel, I partnered with a local nonprofit and started developing free workshops held at the library. Know your credit, protecting yourself from identity theft, navigating family financial disputes. I created clear, accessible resource guides. Sharing my knowledge, helping others empower themselves with information, it felt like the right way to channel what happened, turning the violation I experienced into a tool for community resilience. Sometimes, while prepping for a workshop or helping a patron navigate a confusing financial form, I think back to that forged signature, that moment my world fractured. The betrayal was real, the damage significant. But they didn't break me. They just forced me to finally learn the value of my own name, my own future, my own carefully cataloged truth. And that knowledge, unlike a fraudulent mortgage, is something no one can ever take away.